Ladies and gentlemen, it was not what I expected. One evening, in the quiet of my own thoughts, I came face to face with something that unsettled me to my core. It was not a statistic, not a headline, not a fleeting news story. It was the truth of Palestine. And when it revealed itself, it did not arrive softly. It struck like a thunderclap, shattering assumptions, leaving me with questions I could no longer silence. It was not the politics that shook me, it was the people. The children whose laughter had been traded for silence. The mothers who hold their children close, uncertain if tomorrow will grant them another embrace. The fathers who carry burdens far heavier than any human being should bear. These are not characters in a distant conflict. They are flesh and blood, as real as you and I. And once you see them, truly see them, you cannot turn away. For too long, we have accepted the easy narratives, the simplified versions of a story that fit neatly into boxes of allegiance and blame. We are told what to believe, we are given the roles of heroes and villains, and we move on, comforted by the illusion of understanding. But the truth has a way of breaking through, stripping away those illusions, and when it does, it demands something of us. It demands we listen. It demands we question. It demands we act. Truth is not neutral. It carries weight. To learn it is to inherit a responsibility. To ignore it is to betray our own humanity. I tell you now, when I confronted the reality of Palestine, I could not simply file it away in the back of my mind. It pressed against my heart, urging me to bear witness, to speak, to refuse silence. For silence in the face of suffering is its own form of violence. It is not easy. It is never easy to confront truths that unsettle our comfort. Fear rises up. Fear of what it will mean to us. Fear of how others will see us. Fear of what change might demand. But fear, when faced with courage, becomes the crucible in which conviction is forged. And so I say to you, do not run from it. Look it in the eye. Let it change you. Because in the end, what binds us together is greater than what divides us. Our humanity, fragile, imperfect, enduring, is the thread that connects a child in Palestine to a child here, a mother there to a mother here. When we choose to see it, to feel it, to honor it, we create a space where justice can breathe and compassion can grow. The truth of Palestine shook me, not because it was distant, but because it was so close, because it reminded me that suffering anywhere is a mirror of our shared human story. And now, that truth is yours as well. Carry it, speak it. Do not let it be buried beneath indifference. It came without warning, not through some grand event or political announcement, but through a moment of stillness, when I allowed myself to look, truly look at a story I had ignored for far too long. The truth of Palestine was not handed to me neatly packaged. It revealed itself piece by piece, with every image, every testimony, every voice that pierced the silence. At first, I thought it was just another tale of conflict, something distant, something that belonged to another world. But the deeper I went, the more I realized how wrong I had been. It was not a headline. It was a child's eyes staring back from a photograph, wide with a fear no child should know. It was not a statistic. It was the trembling voice of a mother who spoke of nights filled with explosions instead of lullabies. It was not a political argument. It was the rubble of a home that once carried the warmth of generations, reduced to dust and memory. And as I listened, as I saw, I felt something shift within me. This revelation was not easy. It was unsettling, disorienting, even painful. It stripped away the comfortable distance I had placed between myself and their reality. It forced me to confront the humanity I had overlooked. For years I had accepted half-truths and simplified narratives, believing they were enough. But the truth has a way of breaking through illusions, of demanding that we face it, whether we wish to or not. And so I found myself shaken. not by politics, not by ideology, but by people, by the simple, undeniable reality that their pain was real, their suffering unearned, their dignity unbroken. I had expected to encounter a conflict defined by borders and factions. What I encountered instead was the raw pulse of human endurance, and it spoke louder than any speech or debate ever could. That revelation left me with a choice: to turn away or to carry it forward. And I knew in that moment that turning away would be a betrayal, not only of them, but of my own humanity. To see truth is to be changed by it. To be changed by it is to be responsible for it. And once it revealed itself, the truth of Palestine could no longer be ignored. Behind every headline there is a life, not an abstract statistic, not a faceless figure, but a human being with dreams, fears, and memories. When I first began to see past the headlines about Palestine, I discovered stories that no newspaper could ever truly capture. There was the child whose laughter once filled a narrow street, now replaced by silence, because that street no longer exists. There was the young boy who carried his school books through rubble, determined to keep learning in a world that tried to deny him the chance. There was the mother who counted her children each morning, not to wake them for school, but to make sure they were still alive after the night's bombardment. These are not stories you can turn away from once you've heard them. They cling to you, they sit in your chest, and they remind you that beneath every statistic of the dead or displaced, there is a universe of love, of family, of humanity that has been stolen. These people are not merely casualties of conflict. They are individuals who once celebrated birthdays, shared meals, and dreamed of the future. To reduce them to numbers is to strip away the essence of who they are. And yet the world too often consumes these stories as passing news, moments of pity quickly overtaken by the next headline. But if you look closer, if you allow yourself to imagine their faces, their voices, their lives, then you can no longer dismiss them. You begin to understand that their struggle is not foreign, not distant, but deeply connected to our shared human condition. When I saw the faces behind the headlines, I realized that this was not about politics or borders. It was about people. People who have been denied the right to live with dignity, yet still hold on to hope with a strength that humbles us all. And it is in their resilience, in their refusal to let suffering erase their humanity, that the truth strikes hardest. Once you see them, you can never again allow their stories to be silenced by the noise of the world. For much of my life, I accepted the stories I was told. They came from television screens, from the words of leaders, from headlines that painted the world in black and white. It was easier that way, to believe there were heroes and villains, to imagine that complex histories could be reduced to simple narratives. But when I began to look deeper into Palestine, those assumptions began to crack, and what I found beneath them unsettled me more than I can describe. We are conditioned to believe that distance shields us from responsibility. We are told that if something happens far away, it is not our concern. We are encouraged to see conflict as a clash of ideologies, when in truth, it is a collision of lives, of flesh and blood. The assumptions we carry about who is right, who is wrong, who deserves sympathy and who does not, are often built not on reality but on convenience. They are fed to us so we can move on quickly without the burden of asking difficult questions. But questioning assumptions is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of honesty. When I confronted the images, the testimonies, the sheer weight of Palestinian experience, I realized how much I had accepted without thought. I had believed in stories crafted to keep me comfortable, to spare me from the discomfort of confronting injustice. And I had to ask myself, how many truths have I ignored simply because they were inconvenient? How many lives have been overlooked because they did not fit the story I was told? There is power in asking the questions we are told not to ask. Why are some lives grieved while others are forgotten? Why is suffering explained away when it does not align with our expectations? Why do we remain silent when silence benefits only the oppressor? These questions strip away the illusions. They force us to see that what we accepted as truth was often only a shadow of it. And in that realization comes a heavy responsibility to question always and to listen beyond the noise. For if we do not challenge assumptions, we risk living our entire lives blind to the suffering of those who need us most. Truth, when it finally reveals itself, is never passive. It is not simply knowledge to be stored away or an idea to be debated. It is a summons. To see truth is to feel its weight pressed down on you, demanding that you respond. When I encountered the reality of Palestine, I realized that knowing was not enough. Awareness without action is a hollow gesture. To learn of injustice, to hear the cries of people stripped of their homes, their freedom, their dignity, and then to turn away is not neutrality, it is complicity. There is a tendency in our world to treat truth as if it were optional, as if we can choose to acknowledge it when convenient and ignore it when it threatens our comfort. But truth does not bend to our convenience. It stands unyielding, waiting for us to decide whether we will carry it or deny it. And when the truth carries the weight of human suffering, there is only one moral path: to act, to speak, to refuse silence. Anything less is a betrayal of our own humanity. The truth of Palestine is not just a story of politics. It is a story of people who wake each morning not knowing if the day will grant them safety or sorrow. It is a truth written in the rubble of destroyed homes, in the weariness etched into a father's face, in the resilience of a child who dares to dream despite the odds. To recognize these truths and remain silent is to allow suffering to continue unchallenged. To speak them aloud is to shine a light where others would prefer darkness. Truth asks something of us. It asks for courage, for conviction, for compassion strong enough to pierce through apathy. It does not allow us to stand at a distance, detached and unmoved. Once seen, truth binds us to responsibility. And though that responsibility may feel heavy, it is also liberating, because it reminds us of the power we hold, the power to witness, to advocate, to demand justice. The moral imperative of truth is clear. To know is to act. Anything less is silence in the face of suffering, and silence is a choice we cannot afford to make. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward in spite of it. When I first confronted the reality of Palestine, fear was my first companion. Fear of what it would mean to see the world differently. Fear of the discomfort that truth brings when it shatters the safe illusions we build around ourselves. Fear of the judgment that follows when we choose to speak aloud what others prefer to keep hidden. And yet, it is precisely in the face of this fear that courage must be born. The reality I discovered was not easy to look at. It was painful, raw, and unrelenting. It showed me children who had lost their innocence too soon, families clinging to hope amid devastation, entire communities carrying grief that would break most of us. There is a part of us that wants to turn away from this, to protect ourselves from the heaviness of it all. But courage asks something different. It asks us to stay, to witness, to let the pain of others touch us, even when it unsettles us. Because to look away is to grant permission for injustice to continue unchallenged. Confronting reality requires strength, not just physical, but moral. It demands that we resist the temptation to believe the easier story, to accept the narratives that protect our comfort. It demands that we wrestle with truths that force us to rethink what we thought we knew and who we thought we were. And in that struggle, something transformative happens. We begin to understand that courage is not simply about great acts on distant battlefields. It is about the quiet, steady resolve to face truth and carry it forward, no matter how heavy it feels. The courage to confront reality is also the courage to speak it. It means raising our voices even when they tremble. It means standing in solidarity even when others stand against us. It means choosing humanity over indifference, even when it costs us our peace of mind. Reality may be harsh, but courage allows us to face it without flinching, to honor those who endure it, and to become part of the struggle for something better. Without courage, truth dies in silence. With courage, truth finds its echo in the world. In the end, what remains is not politics, not borders, not the endless debates that fill the airwaves. What remains is something far more enduring, our shared humanity. It is the thread that ties a child in Palestine to a child anywhere in the world. It is the same heartbeat that connects a mother holding her child in fear with another holding hers in safety. When we strip away the noise, the propaganda, the divisions, what we find is that we are bound together by something elemental, something that cannot be broken, no matter how hard the world tries to divide us. When I listened to the stories of those living under the weight of conflict, I did not hear strangers. I heard echoes of myself, of my family, of people I loved. Their hopes mirrored mine, to live with dignity, to raise children in peace, to know the comfort of safety. Their grief was grief I could recognize, because sorrow has no borders. Their resilience was resilience I admired, because the human spirit, even crushed under unimaginable pressure, still dares to rise. This is the truth that shook me most deeply, that we are not separate, not us and them, but one human family, carrying each other's burdens, whether we acknowledge it or not. It's easy to forget this when the world encourages us to look away, to see difference instead of sameness, to divide instead of unite. But the call of our shared humanity is louder than any voice of division. It whispers to us in the quiet moments of compassion. It reminds us that our lives gain meaning not in isolation, but in connection, in standing alongside those who suffer, in refusing to let them be forgotten. Answering that call does not require grand gestures. It begins with awareness, with empathy, with the decision to see others as fully human. From there, it becomes advocacy, solidarity, and action. When we honor our shared humanity, we refuse to let borders dictate compassion or silence define justice. The truth of Palestine revealed this to me, that to stand for them is to stand for all of us. And if we have the courage to answer this call, then perhaps one day humanity will be stronger than the walls that divide it. And so, having walked through Revelation, through the faces behind the headlines, through the unsettling work of questioning what we thought we knew, one truth stands firm. We cannot return to silence. Once the veil has been lifted, once the reality has been seen, we are changed. To deny that change would be to deny our own humanity. The truth of Palestine is not a distant story. It is a mirror reflecting the choices we make in the face of injustice. We can look away or we can confront it. We can remain comfortable or we can be courageous. We can let others carry the weight of suffering alone, or we can shoulder it with them, bound together by compassion that refuses to yield. History does not remember those who looked away. It remembers those who stood when standing was difficult, who spoke when silence was safer, who let their humanity guide them when the world urged indifference. Each of us carries that same responsibility now. The truth demands it, The people demand it. Our own conscience demands it. Let us not be counted among those who turned away. Let us be among those who chose to see, to speak, to act, because in the end the measure of our lives will not be in the comfort we kept, but in the humanity we shared.